snow operation known as Blade Runner 2.0. This gives us the real-time insight in both salting and plowing operations in every corner of the city, allowing us to dispatch resources as needed. Taken together, higher headcount and better internal monitoring are the primary focus factors behind one of the most exciting winter developments to hit the city since the Rockettes, what we call snow equity. If you grew up here, you likely remember the old days of primary, secondary, and tertiary streets. That kind of division in service level is over. Snow equity means that every street is on a route and every route can be dispatched at the same time for snow operations as soon as conditions warrant it. And it means servicing car lanes and bike lanes at the same time so that New Yorkers who use bicycles can get to work to do their work and continue to do so safely, even as we open car lanes for emergency vehicles and others. This is all outlined in the department's borough-based snow plans submitted to the City Council at the end of September pursuant to Local Law 28 of 2011. As I mentioned earlier, we have over 700 salt spreaders, 2,500 plows, 47 bike lane vehicles, a fleet of brine trucks, and enough salt to turn the city into the world's largest plate of French fries. That said, we are closely watching and managing the work required to maintain our snow fighting fleet. While vehicle maintenance staffing is broadly in line with historical averages, the number of pieces of specialized snow fighting equipment requiring maintenance has grown substantially. The team we have at our central repair shop in Queens, at our borough repair shops across the city, and at every single DSNY garage is working around the clock and has done a fantastic job during recent snow events. Of 175 vehicles requiring service during the recent snowfall, 166 were repaired and returned to service before the end of the weather event. This achievement underscores the resilience and commitment of our staff, even as new challenges emerge. To ensure that our fleet is always ready for whatever weather comes our way, we have recently onboarded 7 new auto mechanics, 2 new automotive service workers, and 6 auto service temps. We are also approved to move forward with filling 12 additional related vacancies and intend to do so immediately. Additional snow may or may not come this year, but we are ready. Every sanitation worker is trained, and with multiple events under our belts, they are tested. Working with the NYPD, DOT, MTA, Parks, DEP, and NYCM, the strongest are prepared to give New Yorkers the safe and easy snow days they deserve. Now I will turn to the bills on today's agenda. Intro 355, sponsored by Councilmember Nurse, would require DSNY to post emergency and resiliency plans on a dedicated webpage. Our snow plans are already available at nyc.gov/snow. And we believe that a separate DSNY emergency and resiliency page will dilute critical messaging coming from the New York City Emergency Management Office. As such, we oppose this bill. Intro 534, sponsored by Councilmember Brandon, increases penalties on certain but not all businesses for failure to remove snow, ice, and dirt from sidewalks. This raises an important point. While DSNY clears snow and ice from roadways and bike lanes, pedestrian infrastructure is the responsibility of the property owner. And DSNY is prepared to enforce these rules to ensure that residents can get where they need to go. We wrote over 4,000 summonses for this in a single storm last year. We have concerns about the narrow focus on chain businesses in this bill as opposed to all properties, and with the ambiguity of the fine structure as proposed. That said, we would be happy to work with Councilmember Brandon on next steps. Thank you, and we look forward to taking your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. You know, I grew up here, and I don't remember the old days of primary, secondary, and tertiary. Maybe you're dating yourself. But just want to congratulate you on this new position. Really excited for your leadership.
Thank you.
And, you know, your years of dedication to New York Strongest, I mean, it's right there in front of us for all to see. And so to have you have that level of experience leading the department, I have a lot of faith.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to now pivot to questions. And I want to acknowledge council members who have joined us now. We have Sandra Ung and Sandy Nurse. Commissioner, what were the insights that were gained from 2023-2024 from the 2023-2024 season that were used to inform adjustments to DSNY's 2025 snow plowing routes?
So after every storm, we do an after-action debrief, some more in-depth than others. As I mentioned, Blade Runner 2.0 plays an integral part in our operations. The great thing about that is that we're able to assess every storm with historical GPS data. Our operations and our operations management division team do a great job of highlighting some of the positives and negatives. So we generally always do a full postseason debrief. What were the good things? What were the bad things? And we always make adjustments going to the next season. Our snow season is year-round. So as soon as our night plow season ends in March, when we start April, we start looking at routing adjustments. Some of them are due to being more efficient. Some of them are just street changes because DOT changes street direction or a new bike lane came on board. So we're always working. As soon as season stops, we start right away. We don't stop, and it goes all the way through. So that's what we do.
Thank you for that. Is there anything specific from last year that, any insights from last year, from 2023, 2024, that's being used to inform your plan for this year? Any examples?
A lot of the things are just more. We're looking at things at timing of the storm, which we actually tried this time around. Is trying to make some scheduling adjustments with our shifts, right? So we go into a split shift operation. This storm that we just had over the weekend, we changed the way we staff. So that was, and it seemed to be really successful, and it was really more efficient. So that was one of the things that we tried this year that was different, and so far it proved to be well.
Thank you. What exactly are the metrics that DSNY uses to estimate the amount of supplies and stockpiles needed for the upcoming winter season?
So we have our inventory. We have about 350,000 tons of salt capacity, 386 gallons of calcium chloride capacity, and then brine, we have over 75,000 gallons. So we don't really forecast for snow events. What we try to do is maximize our capacity, and then after every event, our operations office replenishes that, and we make sure that we stay, fully stocked.
Okay. How does DSNY determine where to pre-position salt spreaders before a snow event?
So this is part of our post-snow season analysis. We try to have it as close to the start of each route as possible. Obviously, we take into consideration, where those pre-position points are. We want to make sure we're not, disturbing residents or any sensitive areas near schools where we're disturbing, school kids if it's during the day. We want to be as close to the start of the route as possible, and if it's near a highway or something, we want to be as close to that as possible.
How long does it take to get the preparation before the salt spreaders are pre-positioned?
So it depends what kind of storm we're going into. As soon as snow season starts, so December is the start of our night plow season. At that point, all of our salt spreaders, all of our spreading equipment has been upgraded by then. Like I mentioned before, our Bureau of Motor Equipment does a phenomenal job of upgrading our fleet. Once we're done with that, we plow all the salt spreaders up. They're plowed up from the minute the snow season starts. And then once we have a sense that we're going into a storm, we load all our salt spreaders, maybe 8 to 12 hours before the start of the projected storm. And then, depending on the timing, we will usually pre-position them. So, anywhere like 12 to 12 hours or so out,
okay.
We have a good sense of when to dispatch the spreaders. Yeah.
Thanks for answering that. Have any locations been determined to be a designated or a predetermined pre-positioning location, or does that change year to year?
It changes year to year, but once it changes, it's a static a set of pre-positioned locations, so we really don't change them. And the reason why we do that is because once we dispatch our fleet, Blade Runner is one of the things that helps us look at the map, we look at the equipment and say, okay, we're supposed to have a piece of equipment here at this pre-position point, and if we see that they're not there, then that's when we look and say, okay, where is this piece, where is it? Because you're talking about 2,500 plows, 700 spreaders, so you imagine it's a lot of pieces to look at on a map, so that helps us kind of give a good sense of maybe there may be an issue here, it might be down equipment, something, so we predetermine that on Blade Runner.
All right. What was DSNY's approximate budget for each of the following for the season's snow operations: salt, calcium, and brine?
Okay, so for this fiscal year, our approximate budget is $25.5 million for this fiscal year, I'm sorry, that's combined, right? That's the combined number for all three. Yeah.
For all three. Yeah. Okay. Any way you have a disaggregated or?
So we don't budget them individually. We have it all in one pot, and then we draw it down as necessary for the three.
Okay. Approximately how much salt and brine is spread citywide during an average snow event?
So it's unique, but generally we spread about 20 million pounds of salt in one pass. And why I say it's unique is like the snow event that we just had this weekend. We were really concerned with the icing conditions because the temperatures were gonna drop really rapidly. And to us, ice is a lot more dangerous than a foot of snow. A foot of snow you can manage, you can get through. Ice, you can get an eighth of an inch of ice, and we're in big trouble. So we wanted to make sure we got ahead of it, and even though we treated the roadways with one pass, we wanted to make sure we retreated it again on subsequent shifts. So an example of how it could be unique, but generally 20 million pounds is of salt is what we use for one pass.
How much is that in tons again?
It's about 10,000 tons.
10,000 tons.
Yeah.
And the entire storage is about
350,000 tons.
350,000
Yeah.
tons. So that's not less than 5%
Yes.
of it.
Yeah.
Less than 5%
Yeah.
of the entire
Yeah.
storage. How quickly is you mentioned earlier that anytime that salt is taken away from its capacity, how quickly is it replenished, including also brine?
Right. I would say, anywhere, I mean, they're pretty good at replenishing it. I would say anywhere up to like 72 hours usually. Yeah, they're pretty good. We have really good contracts with the vendors. Our operations office does. So our operations office does a really good job of kind of not forecasting, but if we know we're going to go into an event where the probability of us actually spreading salt is high, they will kind of say, all right, we're expecting a snow event. We're going to use salt, so they start setting up the deliveries ahead of time. So it's not like we wait until the storm's over to start getting the delivery set up.
How much was spent on road salt in FY 24, 23, and 22?
All right. In FY24, we spent $10 million. In FY23, it was $8.2 million. And in FY22, it was $19.8 million.
Okay. How much was spent on calcium chloride brine in 24, 23, 22?
In FY24, we spent $534,000. FY23, $381,000. And then in FY22, it was $607,000.
Okay. And what is the city's existing inventory of salt and brine? Is it at capacity?
Yes, it's close to capacity. We have about, we just had a storm, but we're about 300,000 tons of salt. And then calcium chloride, we're about 350,000 gallons. And then brine, we're fully stocked at 75,000 gallons.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love answers. What is the process and timeline by which DSNY procures contracts for supplying the city's road salt and calcium brine each year?
So we have, like I mentioned, we have established contracts with multiple vendors to replenish the salt stockpiles, calcium chloride, and brine. And, we pretty much get, like I mentioned before, we get them delivered, before the snow season to make sure we're fully replenished, and then after each snow event. So we have established contracts that we don't have to go every time and go through the process.
Does DSNY procure alternatives to chloride-based road de-icing chemicals?
So we don't really use any alternatives. We pretty much, we've looked at this in the past a couple other times, and a lot of it just cost prohibitive. For example, DOT uses sodium acetate, and just for a order of magnitude, so you kind of get a sense of. So my understanding is for the sodium acetate, which is an alternative that I believe they use, they pay about $3,300 a ton. For our rock salt, we pay from $76 to $86 a ton. So you can see the difference there. For us to use that alternative, it would be just really expensive, and the effectiveness too is another thing that we'd be concerned about.
I'd like to recognize Councilmember Banks for joining us. How much is spent? So I was gonna ask you how much is spent on these alternatives, but you're saying you don't really
Yeah, no,
tap into that alternative.
right.
All right. Next question. What happens to surplus salt or brine that is not used at the end of the snow season? Does it go back into the storage pile or?
Yeah, so thankfully, most of our salt sheds are covered. The ones that are outdoor that don't have covers, we put tarps over them. But yeah, we just keep them on hand for the next snow season, and that's what we do with it.
How does this factor into the budget cost in the subsequent year when you have a surplus salt?
So do you want to take this one?
So the short answer is it doesn't factor in. The budget each year is set based on the 5-year average of actual spending. So if we have surplus salt, our budget's not cut or anything. It's just based on what we spent in the prior 5 years.
And when you replenish, is that also part of the 5-year?
Correct, yeah. So when we do the replenishing, that counts as an expenditure in that year, and that would factor into the 5-year average moving forward.
Okay. Has DSNY or another agency considered studying the impact of road salt on the environment or city infrastructure?
No, the only thing like I said, we've kind of looked at is using that alternative that DOT uses, but, again, it's just from a budget perspective and effectiveness, it just seems something that we really wouldn't be in line with our operation.
Are any considerations made regarding road salt applied near potentially sensitive areas, such as landscaped areas and parks, or near smaller waterways that may be negatively impacted by increased salinity?
So we don't go inside parks. Parks Department services the areas inside the parks. Any areas near waterways. So when we have salt spreading operations, there's different spreading widths that we adjust for. So if you see a salt spreader on a highway, you'll see that salt spreader is a little bit wider than a one-lane road. So we generally, the way the widths are set up is that we try to keep the road salt on the road itself and not go past it. So it really wouldn't be impacting some of those areas.
Okay. Are bike lane snow plowing routes incorporated into street routes, or are these like their own routes?
So we've made, again, just to talk about some of the investments, you can see a really good picture here. This is what we call our all-terrain vehicles, the ATV. We have 47 of these vehicles in our fleet, and we have dedicated routes for them. And that allows us to focus on bike lanes simultaneously as the roadways, so they have their own dedicated routes.
Are those the skid steer loaders?
No, skid steers
separate.
are the other ones, correct, yes.
Okay, what's the difference between them?
So the skid steers are more for clearing manual when we get into a heavier snow, when we clear bus stops, crosswalks, if we want to make piles, if we get a lot of snow, that's when we would use skid steers. Yeah.
And I just want to add one thing, Councilmember, about these pieces. This is just one of the ultimate examples of a government pilot becoming a permanent program. This is like when we talk about, pilots that continue forever and never go anywhere. Back in 2015, we tested one kind of bike lane vehicle. It didn't work that well. Then we got a different one, and we got one of them, and one of them worked really well. Then we got a fleet of 47, but they were leased, and they worked really well, so we bought a fleet of 47 of them. Like, it's just exactly how it should be, going from pilot to permanent execution.
What do you call these?
This is an ATV, bike lane ATV.
Okay, and how many of those were purchased?
47,
47.
which is the amount to be able to service every protected bike lane at a simultaneous level of service as the car lanes.
Okay. If bike lanes have their own distinct routes, when are those routes deployed in relation to when city brining and salting operations begin?
Simultaneously. So as soon as we go into any kind of spreading operations, they're deployed at the same time.
Okay, it's also fair to say that having those ATVs also create more jobs, right, during the snow season?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that's part of, what I mentioned before, this administration, Mayor Adams has committed to, giving us one of the highest headcounts we've had, and we're able to staff, these kinds of equipments, at the same time as the other operations, so yeah.
When was... Okay. Councilmember Schwang has joined us. When was the last heavy snow event that caused DSNY to activate emergency hired equipment contracts?
All right, so I just want to clarify. We have the two different contracts. We have the requirements contract, where we have a set amount of private hired equipment on standby for the snow season, and then we have the emergency hired equipment contracts, which we typically don't hire unless we get into a situation where there's a lot of snowfall or this situation. We have not used the emergency hired equipment contract since March of 2017.
Okay.
But we have used the requirements contract as soon as this past snow event. We have tow trucks that
So
we hire.
the requirement contract is usually triggered for an average snow event.
Correct, yeah.
And the last time that there was an emergency contract, that was in 2017.
2017, correct.
Okay. What was the nature of that event that required the city to tap into the emergency contract? And can you describe the emergency services that were needed to respond to the heavy snow event?
Sure. So that was a storm that was 7.5 inches, but it doesn't sound like a lot. I think the one thing we had going on was we had the St. Patrick's Day parade operation, so that draws a lot of our personnel and equipment. So that's what required us to hire the emergency contracts, and we employed dump trucks, roll and roll off trucks, front end loaders, and skid steers.
I would also like to recognize Councilmember Julie Menon for joining us. Next question. DSNY's borough-based snow plans reference that the Brooklyn Promenade on the BQE from Tillery Street to Atlantic Avenue will not be salted, and that DOT will treat it with de-icing machines. Can you explain why the different snow removal mechanism is used in that location?
Sure. So just to be clear, we still plow that area. So we still maintain the plows. I'd have to defer to DOT for the specifics, but that's the area, the triple cantilever area. And I know they've made a lot of adjustments with some, weight restrictions over there. So I don't want to speak on their behalf, but that's the area that they've, been looking to make some adjustments on over there.
Based on your knowledge, are there any other locations in the city where alternative snow removal techniques are used?
Yeah, so DOT maintains the East River crossings such as the Brooklyn Bridge, 59th Street Bridge, and I believe that they use those methods as well there.
Okay. DSNY's borough-based snow plans reference that when snow reaches a certain depth, it is piled, then taken to DEP-approved snow melters, or DSNY's pre-stage melters. What happens to the melted snow that results from the melter machines?
So we take them to these areas, pile them up, and then the snow melters do their job. They melt the snow into water, and then they get discharged into a DEP-approved sewer.
Is the water ever harvested for city use?
Not to my knowledge, but maybe DEP might have a better sense of that.
How many inches of snow would trigger the snow melters to reach capacity? Would you know?
For the snow melters to reach capacity?
Yeah, like citywide. If what is it? Is it a 1 inch or 2 inches or?
Oh,
3
for us
inches?
to initiate like a snow melting operation?
Or at what point would it reach capacity as well?
I don't know. I don't know that we've reached capacity on our snow melters. I think for us to initiate snow melting operations, it depends on how. I would say 6 to 12 inches, but it depends on the temps afterward, right?
Okay.
If we get temps like this that it's freezing, snow's not going anywhere, we might initiate that maybe in a 6-inch storm. But again, if it's mild, the snow generally melts a lot quicker, and we wouldn't have to deploy that operation.
Just on the capacity, the smaller ones melt 60 tons an hour, and the larger ones melt 120 tons an hour. So the idea of reaching capacity, I don't think we could ever get. If there's a storm that maxes out the ability to use these things, we have much bigger problems.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, has there ever been a point where it's reached capacity?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Well, I'm hopeful that we won't reach that problem then. How many staffers? And I have a few more questions. I'm gonna let my colleagues ask some questions. I only have like a few more. How many staffers does DSNY allocate to sidewalk snow removal enforcement?
So we don't allocate specific enforcement personnel when it comes to snow removal. What we usually do is that we have our field supervisors, and in the course of their duties, they are, looking at those kinds of areas that have violations where they're not, properties are not clear in their sidewalks. But, on average, we would have about 425 field supervisors, 68 sanitation police officers, and then 38 enforcement agents on a general, shift, 24-hour period when we're on these kinds of operations, that they would be the ones issuing these summonses.
Is there a ramped up enforcement during snowfall?
No,
Like, or in the day that it's snowing?
yeah, I mean, so we wouldn't be able to issue summonses until after the storm stopped. And then at that point, they're multitasking. So they're looking at, right now, like today, we're into regular collection operations. We had some, post snowstorm operations. So they're monitoring all that stuff. And in the course of their duties, they're doing that. So, we do maximize the people that are working, but we don't just ramp up just for that purpose.
During the 2023-2024 snow season, how many violations were issued for failure to approximately remove snow from pedestrian walkways?
So the 2023-2024 snow season, we issued 9,495 summonses related to failure to remove snow and ice from the sidewalk.
And how is that figure compared to the years before? Obviously, I know there wasn't that much snow before that, but just curious to know how that would also compare to 2021 when there was snow.
I'd have to get back to you on the 2021 figures, but just to compare it to this year, so we've issued 7,315 summonses for this snow season. So
Are you saying from 25?
yes, for 24, 25, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's definitely going up.
Yep.
That's what it sounds like. Of these violations, how many were issued to residential addresses versus businesses?
So for the 2023-24 season, of those violations, 9,399 were residential, 75 were commercial, and then 21 were issued to vacant lot properties.
So it seems like commercial is very low.
Correct.
So it would be great to see if the agency could apply, more to the extent it has resources and the personnel to because I've seen a lot of businesses where the sidewalks still remain,
Yeah.
with snow.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Chair. And that's definitely one of the things that I would definitely look to working with you in administration. If there's any areas, please reach out to me or staff, and I would love to look at that. A lot of times, we go off 311 complaints, but if there's areas, I have no problem.
Okay. We'll keep those conversations.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd also like to acknowledge Councilmember Carr for joining us. I have two to three questions, and I'm passing over to my colleagues. DSNY currently has 102 skid steer loaders.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big concerns we hear from residents during the snow is their ability to navigate the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Is 102 loaders enough to clear the number of pedestrian walkways and other passages?
Yeah, so the skid steers are not the only form of the only equipment that we use for clearing pedestrian walkways. A lot of it's manually done by the sanitation workers. If you could see one of the photos here, they're clearing an overpass. So there's areas that we wouldn't be able to get equipment on, but we're manually clearing snow, and that's one of the things that we focus on. We heavily focused on Monday after Sunday storm. We had all our personnel out there clearing that. So the 102, it definitely helps, makes it more efficient, but the manual clearing is one of the things that we also do.
All right. You already answered my last question on stockpiles of rock salt being replenished. You said within 72 hours.
Yeah.
So
around that
time,
period, yeah.
right? So all right, I'm gonna turn it over to. I'll do Nurse first. To Councilmember Nurse. You don't have any questions? Okay. Councilmember Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations
Thank
to the acting commissioner. And also, too, want to congratulate you on the great snow removal that was done in this past storm. Definitely did a good job in my district, so we're extremely happy about that in the 42nd Council District. As the chair of the Public Housing Committee, are there any collaborations between the Department of Sanitation and other city agencies or authorities to ensure that they are fulfilling their snow removal responsibilities? For example, NYCHA. We know that NYCHA is responsible as well for taking care of their grounds. But when it's not done and then where there are complaints, Is there any enforcement by sanitation or input or what any type of oversight that's done?
Yeah, so anytime we have a snow event, we have the multi-agency meetings with NYSUM and all the other agencies around there, including NYCHA.
Okay.
If there's any concerns on there, we say it on the calls, and we have relationships with NYCHA as well, where we can communicate with them.
Right.
And that's really the goal here, is to make sure that the sidewalks are clear, and we communicate that with them regularly.
Well, specifically when it comes to like the RAD Pack converted developments,
Right.
what's the communications with them? Because I know they tend to operate in their own silo
Right.
when it comes to NYCHA.
So anytime we see a NYCHA property or RAD Pact, we mention that to them as well. We can issue summons to them. Again, it's obviously the goal is to get the sidewalks clear. Look, if we write a summons to them, it's the sidewalk's still going to be, not cleared for the pedestrian. So the goal is to get it cleared. But that is something that we do mention to NYCHA on these calls, and we communicate to them once we get these complaints.
Are residents able like to send video to sanitation, or are they also able? Is there a mechanism for them to also report NYCHA to 311?
Yeah, 311, they can report these kinds of things, and I believe there is an ability to upload photos. I'm not
Okay.
sure about videos, but I think there is an ability
Photos.
to upload photos.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the plan for us to support local businesses within the 42nd during winter storms, particularly regarding snow removal for businesses in the common areas?
So, you want to talk about some of the outreach we've done?
So, nice to see you, Councilmember.
Good to see you.
One of the things that we have really focused on here is outreach to make sure that property owners understand that it's their responsibility. A lot of commercial tenants don't realize that their landlord that they're renting from is supposed to be clearing that sidewalk. And we've tried to empower them as much as possible to go to the landlord and say, I'm paying you commercial rent every
Right.
month. You're supposed to be clearing the sidewalk. As far as, the resources to do it, it is on the property owner. It's one of their responsibilities. And we also always remind them that this is not something that's intended to be onerous on businesses. It's intended to facilitate pedestrian traffic into their businesses.
Were there any summonses issued to any landlords, especially along like the business corridors throughout the city, or particularly within the 42nd Council District?
We can check on the map, but for sure there were. Yeah.
We'd love to know that. Does the Department of Sanitation conduct dry runs or training exercises to prepare staff and equipment for major snowfalls?
Yeah,
And
so
how often is that done? What does that look like?
so every year we do in-service training.
Okay.
We begin in September, and we do it. All of our entire workforce is trained on, like you said, doing dry runs. We have them drive the routes. We have navigation devices in all of the trucks, and we get them familiar and reacclimated with that, because sometimes it's not straightforward. And if we get new employees, we want them to be familiar with that as well, and they drive the routes with plows on.
Okay. And with the recent snowfall citywide, can you provide specific numbers regarding personnel, resources deployed for the 42nd Council District, which covers a large landmass? We're pretty spread out. What specific plans are in place to address the needs of of my district and to ensure that the constituents are serviced?
So the way we staff our snow operations are by our districts, which are community board boundaries.
Correct.
I can definitely get you a more specific, detailed information on the breakout that would encompass your district.
Okay.
But yeah, I could just make you assured that we had one of the highest headcounts this year, and the equipment was one of the highest equipment we've had in over so many years. So I'm confident that that you'll be happy with the numbers.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if you could indulge me for one more minute so I can just
No
ask this
problem.
question. Thank you. How much salt is allocated or reserved specifically for each council district, and how is this distribution determined?
So we have 42 salt storage locations across the entire city. I mentioned before, there's 350,000 tons.
All right.
So that's available to the entire city. We haven't, thankfully, reached a situation where we fell short of salt, And if we did, we would have all the salt sheds available to every district, so we wouldn't have issues there.
And just my last question, I'm gonna wrap this up. There used to be a salt housing salt warehouse, I would call it, in my district. I don't know, is it still active? I believe it was on Loring or.
I don't believe that one is still there, but sometimes we have to move them for various reasons.
Okay.
If they're not city-owned properties, depending, things like that. But we try to maintain the same amount of salt sites across the city. So if we moved it, it would be to another location.
Because I see salt in there, but I don't know if I don't see the activity.
You said
So
it was
maybe
on. You said it was
It's
on.
on Loring and I think it's Drew. I can get you the
Okay.
specific
Yeah, I'm gonna look at-
location,
yeah.
but I just want to know
Okay.
what is the sanitation still using that? Because
Yeah,
I don't see the any activity.
It might be another city agency because MTA
okay.
and Park sometimes has their own piles as well. So.
All right, thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. That concludes my question.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. We're very passionate about salt here, okay? I'm going to now turn it over to Councilmember Schwang for questions.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the work sanitation did in my district. I do have some questions. It's not working. It's working now. So some community has holidays. During the holidays, if they, by religious reason, they cannot remove the snow, what kind of, will they get tickets in the sidewalk?
I mean, ultimately, what we try to do is speak to the property owner before, if it's possible, before we issue a summons. But yes, we would issue a summons, across any day if there's snowfall, because then it would create a pedestrian hazard if it doesn't get cleared right away.
Is any program like holiday coming up or when it's during Shabbat, they're not able to take out garbage, anything? I do have a constituent get a lot of tickets
Right.
during the Shabbat time because they have to take out the garbage early before the sunset. And then they got the tickets
Right.
because they take out the garbage before 8 o'clock. Is any way, anything sanitation can do, but it's not fair for them because
Right.
it's their religious reason they cannot do that.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. We hear this from certain neighborhoods. I mean, our position is that this is the property owner's responsibility to comply with the rules, right? It doesn't have to be any individual person who may have a religious reason why they can't take the trash out, but somebody in the property has to be putting it out after, or not. They could skip that collection day if they don't want to put the trash out. We have to apply these rules evenly and fairly. There are so many people in every neighborhood that you represent who have seen the results of the later trash set-out times, who've seen the results of our enforcement of sidewalk passability and cleanliness, and that requires us enforcing it evenly. I will say in certain neighborhoods that have a high population of people who are Shomer Shabbos, who are Shabbat observant, we've offered to move the collection day to a different day of the week, so this wouldn't come up at all. And so far, community leaders have said, oh no, we like that you do it when there's no traffic. So that's a trade-off. We're happy to make that change. If they don't want Saturday to be a collection day at all, truly, we're totally open. We're waiting to hear from community leaders, but in the meantime, the property owner has to find a way to make sure that the trash goes out at the legally required time and that the sidewalk is clear for everyone to be able to get where they need to go.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nurse.
Thank you, Chair. I had one question about what happened, or what is the status of the program that was meant to address the kind of no man's land areas of roadways that have like these green spaces. I remember the former commissioner was like very big on this, and then I wasn't sure if it's been a while, so I can't remember, but just wondering what the status of that is right now.
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the Targeted Neighborhood Task
TNT,
Force, the TNT.
right, yeah, TNT.
Yeah, no, that's actually we still have it going.
Okay.
It's really successful. Our cleaning operations team and our chief there, Chief Pitts, gives me a call out daily and weekly on it. We take photos. It's great. I think we've highlighted some of it in our year end. I think we posted MMR now.
Okay.
So no, it's still going strong. It's really successful.
And that is just based on calls, or is there like a set of like targeted areas that you go to all the time?
Yeah, there's a set of areas, but sometimes we get new areas that pop up. So if there's any areas in your district,
Can I add an area?
yeah, sure.
Okay, I would love. Well, I was just curious. I
No,
was like, because I remember I wasn't sure if the program had had funding cuts. I couldn't recall. Like, time is always hard to pull up in the brain. At the area where Atlantic Avenue and North Conduit diverge is, I know you all know this is like a rough area because of the overgrowth. But when it's winter and the leaves are gone, and you can see all the trash there, and it's just a chronic area.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look into that and definitely address that.
It would be great to have that on the permanent list because it's just like, we've paid for cleaning around it, but that area is really hard and also dangerous for kind of like the other supplemental cleaning groups to get at.
And just so you know, I would definitely look into that. It sounds familiar. Sometimes, unfortunately, we clean it and then it gets dirty right away.
No,
So-
I understand it's
yeah.
a hard area to get at,
Yeah.
but that's why I'm saying if there's a set list, it would be great to
Yeah,
add
no,
it.
we'll definitely look at that and definitely see if we can add it to the list. Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'd like to recognize Councilmember Vernical, who has joined us. Councilmember Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Couldn't be a more timely hearing, but I don't have any questions, Commissioner. I just want to say congratulations again on your new role, and also just to let you know that my office, spanning Staten Island and parts of Southwest Brooklyn, has a great working relationship with the agency's intergovernmental team, as well as the borough chiefs and district superintendents and everyone on down. Phenomenal workers in New York's strongest, and look forward to that relationship continuing. And just great job in the district with the latest snow removal operation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Of course, thank you.
I would like to associate myself with Carr's comments. Very, very good job cleaning the snow this past week.
Thank you.
Councilmember Vernical, if you have questions?
Thank you so much, and thank you all again for the incredible work you do in my district, and congratulations, Commissioner. We look forward to working with you. Just have one question regarding seniors. As we all probably know, it's difficult for seniors to remove snow. Some of them could be disabled or can't afford to hire someone to do that. So, and I don't believe there are any exemptions for seniors. If there are, please tell us. But if not, what can we do to make it easier on them?
So we don't have any exemptions. What we try to message is if there's anybody that, your neighbors or anything like that can help out, that's what we encourage. I don't think we have any other programs, right?
No, I don't say, Councilmember, it's such an important question that comes up at this hearing regularly. And obviously the flip side of it is, a senior who's trying to use the sidewalk needs it clear, right? It could go either way. Senior who's the property owner and can't clear, or senior who's trying to get where they need to go. For what it's worth, this has come up so many times over so many years, and there's never been a serious effort to produce a meaningful solution. So it is something that we should all work on together.
Yeah.
Anyone else wants to ask any questions? All right, seeing no more questions, this panel is hereby excused.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for testifying.
If council members, if anybody wants one of these for their offices, we could take them back, but if anybody would like one, just grab us before we leave.
We may take a few. We're moving to public testimony shortly.
I think this is the Bruckner Expressway.
I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and that decorum shall be governed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearing topic: DSNY'S snow preparedness plans for the 2025 winter season, or any of the legislation on our agenda today. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. Are any members of the public here to testify today? Seeing no one in person or registered online, this hearing is hereby adjourned.